Good day, my friends. This is Dr. James Weldon, Yogadhi, speaking to you from Heavenly Mountain and our community here in Boone, North Carolina, dedicated to unraveling some of the deeper mysteries of life and providing a home for those individuals who would like to seek and experience and live a higher state of consciousness. Heavenly Mountain in Boone, North Carolina is the home of a number of communities and organizations now, the largest of which is the Art of Living Foundation, now the largest all-volunteer charitable organization in the world, doing huge projects for good around the world, in many cases very quietly, without much fanfare, without much notice. And in a sense, that's how it should be. The results of the good works that we do in the world, it's nice when they're done quietly. Although anybody who wants to look a little deeper into the organization and see its activities just needs to go to the websites of Art of Living Foundation. I was involved with another organization called Prison Smart, who's given relief to literally tens of thousands of individuals languishing in prisons all throughout the world. Care for Children International, which has, I think at this point, hundreds of schools and orphanages all throughout Asia and in Africa. So many different branches of this main organization, the Art of Living Foundation. This organization is really kind of a United Nations, a collaboration of many different groups and organizations around the world, and of course, tens of millions of people dedicated to doing quietly the good work of helping individuals live a higher life. And this work that I'm doing is my sharing, really my personal story of the benefits that I've gained in being associated with the organization over many years now, going on some 45 years. When I first met the founder of this organization, when he was a young man, about 20 years old, long ago. No, it really wasn't long ago, but 1976. In the last chapter, chapter 25, we were talking about coming home to Heavenly Mountain. It had been my dream really all of my life to be a part of creating a community and a support network that could help people live higher states of consciousness, understand what they are, and have confidence about the reality of the possibilities of higher states of consciousness. We are really, in a lot of ways, a young culture, really. Just think of what's happened in the last 10 or 15 years. This little device that I have back here, my cell phone, can connect with and talk to billions of people around the planet. This communication now going out over the internet here is spreading out through that web to the entire planet. And although there aren't millions of people listening to this, that is completely fine with me. So I have no need for fanfare. I felt a responsibility because of the very interesting things that I passed through, the many experiences, to share those, to help build a bridge in understanding between our cultures, our different societies, our different points of view. And everything that's happening in Heavenly Mountain is a bridge. And it's symbolized for me by this picture up here behind me that actually comes from a very faint picture famous picture on Sistine Chapel where the symbolic of humanity is reaching out and touching the divine. We can definitely do that. In the process of touching the divine, experiencing the divine both in ourselves and in those in the world is both a science and an art. It's a science in the sense that it is systematic. There are steps to its development, just like climbing the stairs to another floor. And until we climb those stairs and enter the next floor of the building, we can't possibly really understand what is there. We may have been told, we may have been heard, we may have read, but that's not the same thing as direct experience. And one of the purposes of these two books that I've written here, the first one, Living the Enlightened Life, and the second one, The Rise of the First World Teacher, and the third one, which I'm apparently going to continue to share here at the end of this, will surprise a few people. Not that the events that took place, from my point of view, were so unusual. They're just not known. They're not well known. You know, if you live in a desert and all of a sudden it rains and you've never seen any flowers in the desert, it would seem quite surprising to go out in the desert one day after the rains and see flowers coming up all over. These higher states of consciousness are very much like those flowers, not seen commonly in the desert. But this attainment of higher states of consciousness is absolutely real, bona fide. It's both a science and an art. It's a science in the sense that by taking certain steps, by learning to experience the deeper levels of one's consciousness and being through the inner journey, meditation, prayerfulness, service. You can call that yoga, but yoga is not touching the toes, stretching the body. That's not that. Yoga is a state of consciousness. And that state of consciousness can be approached scientifically to achieve that higher state of consciousness through relaxing, letting go, clearing the body of inertia, perhaps through some stress exercises, charging the body with life force through another stage of breathing techniques called pranayama. And then the meditative state leads to an experience, an inner experience called yoga. And now at this point in the world, at the time that we finally moved into this campus on the East Ridge in 2012, when I moved here, there were hundreds and hundreds of millions of people doing this all around the world in various ways. At this point in the world today, 2018, there are literally billions. It's continued to grow. Not just our organizations, but many different methodologies and technologies. So it's a science. Systematically, you can approach and achieve some of the things that I've talked about. And it's an art. It requires skill. It certainly requires skill in understanding. If some of the things that I'm talking about here don't completely make sense, I understand that. One of the ways that you can clarify that is to undertake some of the knowledge programs, and everything that I've shared in a sense is a knowledge program here. There are now some over 50 different episodes of my growth and experience from the earliest days of my life in trying to understand that art. So here at the time that I moved into this community, huge facility on Heavenly Mountain in Boone, over 1,000 acres, literally over 1 million square foot of buildings had been built here. Certainly, to my knowledge, one of the largest and most extensive collection of halls, overnight accommodation, a spa, a retreat center, ultimately an event center, to help bridge understanding between the cultures, help us understand that those things we cherish and love, our family, our community, our traditions, all the good things that have come up in society, our art, all parts of the world, we also want to support that as well. So in 2012, we moved in here, and I talked a little bit in the last chapter, episode 25, about some of the craziness that occurred after this facility here had been empty for so many years, and what we went through to try to make that available to invite the founder of the Art of Living to come, and he did come, thousands of people. Then there were some funny stories of what happened in the middle of that. My house, which was actually the original that I bought here, is about 100 yards away from the entrance to that International Art of Living Retreat Center, and right around the corner from the house that was bought for the founder of that organization to stay when he came here. I was doing my own, I would call it tapasya, my own selfless service to try to make my facility ready for the people that were coming in. And, I painted the entire property. It's a very big house, inside and outside, and including the deck. Now it's over 7,000 square feet, 8 or 9 bedrooms now, really quite a big facility. It needed to be painted, and, I was here alone during that work. I was very limited in funds, and I decided I was going to paint it myself. So anyway, I taped off the windows and bought a paint sprayer, came in to start spraying the property with paint. Now, of course, I'm not an expert painter. And one thing that I forgot in the painting process was to wear a mask for the particles of paint. And even though the windows may have been open in places, I started breathing in that paint. And after a day and a half, I started coughing up paint, literally, and decided I had to eventually get a mask. I thought I had bronchial asthma, but what I had done is actually painted the inside of my lungs to a certain extent. It's okay. I passed through that, but I got dizzy, I got weak. I was stumbling around with the paint gun, painting everything crazily, trying to get this whole process properly ready, at least make it decent. We didn't have any furniture in the property, and so I needed to get some furniture. So I went to a hotel facility where you could buy used hotel furniture, Radisson Hotel, and ended up driving from my place to Washington, D.C., a few hours, loading up this huge truck of furniture, about 7 or 8 full rooms of furniture, driving it all the way back, to Boone, and trying to get everything done in this short period of time that I had, really only a few months, getting it all done. Of course, I needed to go back to Colorado, where we lived at the time, also. And my wife, was actually quite upset with me because we were settled in Colorado. We had a nice property. She had friends there, and all of a sudden I was going to uproot her again. I was going to make her, in a sense, drop that. And I said, well, we can come back and forth. So, about 3 days before this big event, where really thousands of people were coming in from all over the world, I had a disaster in the property. And many of these properties had been abandoned in the winter, and the heating systems in here had to do with what's called radiant heat. The water went through the floor in tubes, to heat the floor. And the hot water system, the boilers hadn't been run for many years. And my boiler was damaged, cracked, and I had to replace a very small piece of it, or otherwise buy a completely new system, which I didn't have the money to do. I didn't have the money to do this. And 3 days before people arrived, a pipe broke in the entire downstairs living room, or most of it, over several thousand feet here. A lot of it was flooded with water. So I had a deluge. I had a flood. And so we dried that out. And that was actually good, because it turned out that the floor in the house at that time was covered with carpet. The carpet was 100% wool, very expensive wool. It was old, it was used. But given my insurance policy, they paid for new carpet equivalent. And of course, I didn't put in all wool carpet on the main floor. So that was a big boon, a gift really. And part of the story of my life is it seems as though those gifts keep on giving. So even the disasters, in many cases in my life, turned out to be really, really great things. And you may look back at some of the disasters that you've had in your life, and you might consider that some of those disasters that you've been through actually result in a lot of good. In my case, it was financial good, well over 20,000, I think it was $22,000 they had to give me in a check. So that allowed me to continue the renovations after that event. So now, after the arrival of the founder of the Art of Living, it was really a wonderful time. This organization is great. One of the reasons that it might be worthwhile to be associated with it, regardless of your background and tradition, take some programs, is you instantly have friends everywhere in the world. I mean, literally everywhere. I could probably now go into virtually any country in the world, almost any city, town in the world, without knowing anybody. And, we consider ourselves one world family. That was the name that was given to the big event that happened before that, called the Silver Jubilee. Vasudeva Kutumbakam, one world family. So we really are one world family. And if you'll take the perspective that even this whole world is really a speck of dust floating in space about a galaxy that we really don't know much about, and what is the whole story of that, and how do we integrate with that, and how we can connect with that life out there. And there is a life out there. There really is. But you might begin to suspect from some of the things that you've been hearing in my readings that we are young in our understanding of the inner spiritual dimension of life and how to be connected to that. Over the years, the founder of the Art of Living and other teachers have led me to believe, and I've come to understand, that there are many, many mysteries in this world. And if you think that the history of your country or even this planet is the entire history, it is not. Life goes back a long ways. Man has been on this planet for a very long period of time. And there really may have been other, but possibly and probably much more advanced cultures in terms of consciousness, at least. Technology, I suspect that there were some advances in technology, a different kind of technology in the past. So life is full of many secrets. And some of those earlier secrets of the world are shared in some of these older cultures. There are books that talk about the cosmic universe beyond. There are. It's impossible for us to prove whether these things are true. It's, at least in my case, it's my hope that through the sharing that I've done in these 2 volumes, maybe 400 pages written now, 55, 60 so episodes in these 2 books. One of the purposes that has been written is to help give you confidence about that there is a science to this, there is a progressive stages in the development of consciousness, and to help you verify for yourself, perhaps by watching some of these, that what I'm talking about is true. I have no need to distort and expand anything at all, not anything. And I tried very hard in the written versions of these works to make sure everything is accurate. But it's one thing to read something in a book, like an adventure story. It's much better adventure when you can see it on the screen. That's why people love movies. They love movies. And I like to go to movies too. I enjoy the movies. And there seems to be a fascination lately, with the superhero movies. We are looking for the heroes. And we just went to one last night. And I was thinking in that movie, the reality of the hidden journey, the unknown journey of our life, in the dimension of really your life, and my life, where we really don't remember our past. We, of course, know much less even than that of our future and of ourselves, our planet, our community, our culture. We really are limited. But compared even to those stories, I would like to suggest that the real true adventure that we're all undergoing is greater than those stories. So why have we been so fascinated with, the superhero movies and those people? Because it's a great entertainment. And certainly life is a great entertainment. But I would like to suggest to you that as fascinating, as spectacular as those movies may be, they're played on a screen and they totally draw you in for the moment. You're totally lost in that. And then when it's over, the screen becomes white again and you walk out and you go, that was great. Our life in a real way is like that. And I would like to suggest that there really are superheroes in this world. There really are very great, wonderful, loving, compassionate, high-minded individuals. But also, there are also many capacities of consciousness which we do not yet realize. So the superheroes in this world are not those that are running around with machine guns and bullets and are blowing up, aliens or imaginary beings. It is really those that are doing the good work in this world, that are feeling their deepest connection with everything around us, and are working to make this world a better world. So part of my story in Living the Enlightened Life, in the second book, The Rise of the First World Teacher, is to share that there's normal happiness, and then there is a level of happiness and joy which is far much greater than that. there's a normal level of satisfaction and peace of mind, and there definitely exists a level of satisfaction and peace of mind which makes that seem like nothing. Every quality in the human character within yourself is latent within you. And there is a science and an art to enriching and growing that. And that science and art is not the belonging of one culture, of one tradition. It's the knowledge of life. And in the same way we're able to enjoy, Chinese food and Japanese food and Thai food and American food, hamburgers and French fries, if you eat those kinds of things, the insights of the world belong to the world culture. And my life has been unbelievably enriched by coming into contact with that and gradually taking advantage of that over a long period of time. So after we arrived here and moved here, all the practical things that needed to be done, we had to do. We had to gradually improve our house and over time, and we did that. I had a position in a job where I was traveling around for this organization, helping them develop their online sales and marketing. It was Sears, if you've ever heard of them. It's a big organization. They have big stores all throughout the United States. But I was given the opportunity to travel all throughout the state in nearby surrounding regions and meet with community leaders, those that were involved in building homes and houses, and share myself, help them a little bit, but also help tell them the story of what I believe will be this location on Heavenly Mountain, a tremendously great community for higher consciousness, which will endure long after we are gone. And over the subsequent years from 2012 onwards, I was working diligently at that, but also as I was traveling around, I was looking to meet and get to know all the different types of spiritual communities that there might be in the area. In North Carolina, we love music, and the community here is definitely more conservative Christian community, and that is wonderful, and I enjoy and support that community. And I had the chance to go to some of these festivals, these bluegrass festivals, where they would play the music and they would sit down and I would whip out my little musical instrument and play right along with them. And to ask some of these individuals, what do you feel is happening in the world? Some of them were ministers, some of them were teachers. Some of them I went to most of all of the centers that were teaching yoga in a bigger way. Met with them quietly and talked to them about what was happening up here on Heavenly Mountain and the great community and facilities that we were developing. So I got to know the community very well. And I was being paid to do that. I would have done it for free. But this organization allowed me, this company allowed me to do this. And that lasted stably, so I could pay my bills, for about 3 years. And at the end of that 3-year period, basically, it ended, totally ended. One day I was working, next day it was over. And it turned out that there was a support for me that came kind of out of the blue as well. So you may notice on the sign behind me, Vacation Lodge, VRBO, Heavenly Mountain. The house we were living in, which by the way was on Heavenly Mountain, was the original hall. meditation hall, yoga hall, practice hall, where all my older friends used to be here from the Transcendental Meditation, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, before they vacated and left the community. So it was a very special place. And so the house is so much bigger than we could use. And we discovered that we could have groups and families come here to vacation. And so we started a lodge in all the rooms that we had. We didn't even go upstairs because it was too big. We really lived in a couple of rooms downstairs. And families would come in and, you know, use the property, church groups and some university groups. Many families would come together and stay in our place. And so that provided ongoing income for me. Now, on the inner dimension, things were continuing to expand as well. In the last segment, and really throughout the book, I've been trying to give clarity in terms of what are the different states of consciousness. And we talked about those 7 states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, and sleeping. And then there's a space in deep sleep where we return to oneness with the divine. And a transcendental state, Turiya, we would call that, between waking, dreaming, and sleeping, where you have a gap which you can have access to that. And how gradually over time, as the deep consciousness deepens through one's practices, that unconscious state of deep sleep becomes conscious. There is a life and intelligence that's always awake in our body, maintains our body, keeps us alive. And even though you may be in the deepest state of sleep, that consciousness is there. And during the dreams, you know, you slip in and out of various events. A lot of that may be related to stress that we've gone through in the day. But gradually, as consciousness evolves, there's awareness that is maintained all the time. So really the whole story of the first book, Living the Enlightened Life, is about that. It's called cosmic consciousness, the establishment of that state, cosmic awareness. What that is, how it comes, how it develops gradually over time. And it's not at all required for everybody that passes into that place to go through all of the different types of things that I went through. I went through some very, very strong, very, very powerful, unbelievable experiences. Personally, I believe that some of that was so that I could have the benefit of sharing this with you, so that you can feel confident about that and understand that to move in those higher states of consciousness, a community like this, a place to go, is really important. To come together in community to do some of these practices together in a group. In the Buddhist tradition, it was called the Sangha. The community is really powerful. It can help accelerate that. And together in group, all of us need to take time to wash our mind, clear our mind of the debris of everyday living. Hopefully you're taking a bath daily, you brush your teeth. But do we ever cleanse our mind? Do we ever really move into deep silence in our being and just we're able to let go? The process of experiencing that can relieve you of really eons of deep stress, because we have trauma, we have stress, we have overwhelming biochemical and deep memories that really prevent us from being deep. So there is a process to do that, and I encourage you to consider listening to the story. This is different than reading in a book. You see, knowledge in book stays in a book. But if you can hear those stories, if you hear what happened to me from the earliest days of my life and all the things I went through, some of the craziness, some of the desperation, some of the difficulties. That's not the same as reading it in a book. This is like watching a movie. I've invited you into the movie of my life so that you can see that and hopefully understand that what I passed through was absolutely real and bona fide. It's exactly as it happened. So that cosmic state of awareness is not a full completed stage. There's a stage beyond that called God consciousness, and God has a impersonal and a personal aspect. I don't want anyone to get lost in that word God. In a certain sense, we are the divine or God compared to this body, right? There are trillions of lives, individual cells that are doing its job. There's a whole city inside. There's a whole production plant and energy plant there's so much stuff going on. Trillions of bacteria doing their job, passing in and out. And in a certain sense, you are master over that. You could make that all go away. So in a bigger sense, there is a higher reality to this world. And our ability to interface with that and have a relationship with that comes through experiencing the presence, if you will, of the divine. And in that presence, the experience of connectedness begins to become extremely tangible. Not only is the inner space full of happiness, but the outer space begins to be experienced with all these wonderful qualities. Every good quality you can imagine is latent in the people and the buildings and the surroundings and the spaces that we're in. So there are absolutely holy, very holy and special places in this world. And these holy, special places allow these higher experiences to happen much easier. And where I'm at on Heavenly Mountain, and it really is a heavenly mountain, it's one of the oldest, it is the oldest mountain range as far as I know in the world. And this place is literally a continental divide where the great continents came together. You know, in the physical body of the world, the mountain ranges, this is kind of like the spine in the body. And there are subtle but very powerful energies that flow out of these spaces. And that's why in these areas throughout the world, people come to those places because of that. And in all traditions. And unfortunately, I've never had a chance to, visit Mecca. I would absolutely love to go. They probably wouldn't accept me there. I would be happy to commit myself to whatever. Maybe someday that will happen. But I know with all those millions of people moving around in great devotion and love, this is a very special place. And there are other very special places around the world. And Rishikesh is one of those. I talked about that. But we need to create those around the world, and that's what's being created here. So as these years passed being here in this community, so there is so in those 7 states of consciousness, there is a stage where the subtle universe begins to interact, and you could say that one of these divine forces or beings can appear. They may appear in some way before that, but it's important to anything that comes into our imagination isn't necessarily true. There are phenomenons and experiences which are actually much stronger than what you're experiencing right now. Much more imminent, much more real, much more tangible, but there is a point at which the impersonal aspect of the divine God meets with the personal aspect. And I guess it's like graduating from college, you receive the degree, if you will. And there is an experience where such a imminent divine quality appears. So that it happens. And then what happens beyond that is unity. Oneness begins to grow. So oneness is a very real, solid experience. And ultimately that grows, continues to grow, gets stronger and stronger until all that is is experienced as connected to you. Now, this is a scientific fact, and this is a experiential fact. Science has said that there's a vacuum state in the universe, a ground level of creation, and all the fine particles come out of that and are going back into that all the time. In the same way, we come out of that every night in deep sleep, and we go back in the unconscious deep sleep, we unite with that. So it is possible to feel connected with that one great field of consciousness. This is called unity, and there are attainments beyond that. But unity is basically feeling the deep connected oneness with all that is. And all that is can be a growing process. So during these years, that's what I was passing through, where that was becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. So at some point, the experience of being connected with the oneness is much stronger than the individuality. Individuality remains. You know, Dr. Weldon's mustache and eyebrows and size and shape remains, but Yogadhi, which actually has a deep meaning, yoga, experiencing coming into the oneness, the consciousness, having and obtaining and living in that space. So there are secrets everywhere, and I won't go into it much longer. So we've passed through creating it, and now the story begins on expanding it, making it grow, developing the other aspects of this community. And so in the next segment, we'll be talking about my desire to continue to expand this community, and also what happened 5 years down the road, 2017, with the 35th anniversary of this unbelievable, wonderful organization doing so much good in the world in a very quiet ways. And then some of the things, amazing things that were beginning to happen on a global level. So thank you for taking the time for listening to me today. And I'll continue sharing my personal adventure. And again, this is my personal story. Just what I passed through, in the hope that it can help provide a bridge, kind of reaching out here, so you can help you understand and realize that this is your truth tomorrow. This is your truth too. So we'll talk tomorrow on episode 26. And in the story of the rise of the first world teacher and the growth of the community in this next huge event that happens in 2017, the World Culture Festival. I wish you all well. Go out today and share perhaps some story that you have to say. And I'm happy to, listen to anybody else's story. If you have a story that you would like to share it, send it to me about what you're passing through. Thank you for coming and listening today until we begin again tomorrow on the ongoing adventure in my personal autobiography. Namaste, and may the divine awaken in your life too.